In the bleak and foreboding times of Salem, the notorious witch trials cast a long shadow of fear and disorder over the entire community. The atmosphere was thick with suspicion as accusations of witchcraft proliferated with alarming speed. Neighbors turned against neighbors, and the mere whisper of involvement with dark magic was enough to seal one's fate. The judicial process, marred by hysteria and superstition, was swift and merciless. Those accused found themselves in the grip of a relentless legal system where proof was often secondary to accusation. The accused were subjected to harsh interrogations, sometimes under torture, to extract confessions or implicate others. Once deemed guilty, the punishment was severe and public. Individuals were either hanged in grim spectacles that drew crowds, or in some instances, burned at the stake, their demise serving as a grim warning to others. This period marked a chapter of profound injustice, where lives were extinguished under the guise of purging evil, leaving a legacy of sorrow and a cautionary tale about the dangers of mass hysteria and the abuse of power. In the heart of a village, shadowed by the dark legacy of the witch trials, lived Demora, a young girl whose world had been shattered by the loss of her mother to the ruthless inquisition of witchcraft. The village, once a place of simple tranquility, now whispered with the echoes of accusation and sorrow. Demora was left with a heart full of unanswered questions, each one more haunting than the last. Was her mother truly a witch? What had led to her tragic end? Grief-stricken and yearning for truth, Demora sought solace and answers from her grandmother, the only family she had left. But her grandmother, a woman molded by fear and the harsh lessons of the trials, reacted with vehement denial. "Never speak of witchcraft, you foolish girl," she scolded with a voice that trembled between anger and terror, her eyes darting as if expecting the walls themselves to listen and judge. Her words, meant to protect, only served to intensify Demora's curiosity and her sense of isolation. Refusing to let go of her quest for the truth, Demora found herself drawn to the local church, a place where the community gathered, but also where much of the judgment had been cast. There, under the somber gaze of the stained glass saints, she met other girls, each one bearing the same scar of loss, mothers accused and lost to the hysteria of witchcraft. These girls, like Demora, were left with nothing but memories and questions, their lives forever altered by the absence of maternal love. Over the coming weeks, these young souls found solace in each other, their shared grief forging a bond as strong as any spell. They learned to navigate their daily lives with caution, knowing well that in this village, a group of girls could easily be misconstrued as a coven. By day, they maintained their solitude, each keeping a low profile, but they had devised a secret sign, a subtle gesture of acknowledgement that spoke of their camaraderie and silent support. When night fell and the village torches dimmed to mere flickers, they ventured into the safety of the woods. Here, beneath the ancient canopy where no prying eyes could see, they gathered. The forest, with its whispering leaves and moonlit clearings, became their sanctuary. Here, they could speak freely, sharing stories of their mothers, discussing the injustices they had witnessed, and plotting ways to uncover the truths hidden by fear and superstition. Each meeting was a blend of mourning and defiance, a quiet rebellion against the terror that had claimed so much from them. Yet in this secretive sisterhood, they found strength and a glimmer of hope for understanding, or perhaps redemption. Driven by an insatiable need to unearth the truth, Demora began to sift through the remnants of her mother's life, searching for any clue that might illuminate the shadowy corners of her past. With the help of her newfound companions, they managed to drag a heavy, ancient wooden chest into the seclusion of the woods. With bated breath, they lifted the heavy lid, revealing not secrets but simple garments, dresses and hats worn by her mother. In a moment of tender nostalgia, Demora donned these tattered relics, twirling in the moonlight, the familiar scent enveloping her like a comforting embrace. As they continued their exploration, one of the girls discovered a drawer filled with shawls and religious brooches. Demora, sensing something more, squinted in the pale moonlight, turning the drawer around to reveal an unexpected sight. The back was inscribed with letters of the alphabet and the words yes and no, forming what seemed to be a talking board. A memory, long buried and now emerging like a spectre, flashed before her eyes. A candlelit room where her mother sat with other women, their hands guiding a wooden arrow across this very board. Panic struck Demora. She slammed the drawer shut, stripping off her mother's dress with a cry. She was a witch! The revelation left the group in a state of shock. Their previous camaraderie turned to silent introspection. They dispersed, each returning home with heavy hearts, the weight of this new truth leading to many a sleepless night filled with contemplation and fear. Their secret sign became their only communication, a silent nod to shared secrets, but none dared return to the woods until curiosity, that relentless beast, stirred once more. What if the board had powers? Demora pondered aloud, explaining that this was no mere drawer, but a conduit for communication with the dead. The idea was both terrifying and tantalizing. As the next full moon rose, casting its silver glow over the forest, the girls gathered again, now with a new, dangerous purpose. They christened themselves a coven, bound by their quest for answers and the thrill of the forbidden. They were aware that if caught, their fate would be sealed, death by fire. With trembling hands, they placed their fingers on the arrow, as Demora whispered the first question into the night. Mother, were they right? Are you a witch? The planchette slid decisively to yes. In unison, they recoiled, a chill sweeping through the forest. Suddenly, whispers filled the air, and the planchette began to move on its own, spelling out a chilling message. Avenge us. One by one, the girls were besieged by visions. Shadowy figures darting at the edge of their vision, the sound of footsteps where none should be, branches rustling in an eerily still night. They felt the icy touch of unseen hands on their skin. Fear gripped them, yet beneath it, a resolve was forming, a determination to honor the plea from beyond, to seek justice for the souls wronged by the hysteria of their time. Their journey had just taken a dark, supernatural turn, one that would bind them together in ways they had never imagined. In the heart of the ancient, moonlit forest, Demora sat cross-legged on the damp earth, her presence both haunting and compelling. Her arms were outstretched, as if she were trying to grasp something beyond the reach of the physical world. The once elegant dress she wore was now torn, revealing swathes of her pale, almost luminescent skin, which seemed to glow under the eerie light. Her eyes, usually so full of life and inquiry, had rolled back, leaving only the whites visible, giving her a look of otherworldly possession. From her lips came a husky, rhythmic chant, the words foreign and swirling like a dark incantation, each syllable a key to an unknown realm. Around her, the other girls stood in a tight circle, their expressions a mix of fear and fascination. They held the talking board high above their heads, their fingers all touching it, connecting them in a ritualistic embrace. The board, now an object of dark power, seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. Suddenly, the forest was bathed in a hellish light, not from above, but emanating from around them, casting long, twisted shadows. The air was tainted with the acrid smell of sulfur, a scent that spoke of brimstone and the underworld, filling the woods with an ominous foreboding. Then, as if struck by a bolt from the heavens, each girl was hit with a wave of paralysis. Their bodies stiffened, their faces froze in silent screams, and one by one they collapsed. They fell upon each other, creating a tangled heap of limbs and cloth, their dresses now as ragged and forlorn as their spirits seemed to be. The forest, silent before, now seemed to watch, its trees whispering secrets of doom, and the earth beneath them trembling with the weight of their fall. The tableau they formed was one of sacrifice, of bodies given over to whatever forces they had invoked, their attempt at communion with the other side, now possibly sealing their fate in ways they could never have imagined. In the depth of night, a vigilant watchman from their town, his eyes accustomed to the dark, caught sight of a hellish glow emanating from the depths of the forest. Alarmed by this ominous light, he hurried to alert the sheriff, his boots echoing through the silent streets of Salem. As he ran, he noticed with growing dread that the walls of the village square were now marred with strange arcane symbols, etched as if by some spectral hand, each line and curve an invitation to chaos. The town, roused from slumber, gathered with haste. Villagers armed themselves with torches and pitchforks, their tools now weapons in a makeshift militia. The air was thick with tension, as once again, the spectre of witchcraft seemed to loom over Salem, casting long shadows of fear and accusation. A parade of the vengeful, driven by righteous fury, marched towards the woods. The satanic scent of sulfur, heavy and unmistakable, spurred them on, their voices rising in hymns, seeking divine protection as they ventured into the unknown. Their torches cast dancing lights, creating a scene that was both holy and ominous. The Inquisitor, leading this grim procession, was the first to reach the source of the eerie light. There, in a clearing marked by scorched earth, lay the remnants of what could only be described as a dark ritual. The ground was black, the trees around silent witnesses to whatever had transpired. Amidst this desolation, the talking board lay abandoned, seemingly forgotten in the chaos. However, a young girl, unnoticed in the tumult, saw its potential, or perhaps its peril, and swiftly secreted it away in her duffel bag, her eyes wide with the knowledge of what it might mean. Despite the frenzied search by dozens of villagers, combing every inch of the forest, the girls were nowhere to be found. The woods, thick with shadows and secrets, yielded no further clues. The girls vanished, their fate becoming one of the many mysteries that haunted Salem, a tale whispered in the dark corners of the village. To this day, some claim that the spirits of those girls still roam the woods, their laughter turned to whispers, their presence felt in the rustling leaves and the chilling breeze. And if one listens closely, especially under the cover of night, they might hear the faint, beckoning whispers from the talking board, inviting the unwary to join their spectral coven, to embrace the darkness that once consumed them. The question of the Ouija board's origin is as enigmatic and layered as the board itself, a riddle wrapped in the mists of time and debate. To trace the lineage of this enigmatic object is to delve into a tapestry of myth, history, and speculation, where the threads of truth and legend are tightly interwoven. One popular narrative posits that the Ouija board has ancient roots, with some scholars and enthusiasts suggesting connections to various forms of divination practiced by ancient civilizations. There's the dowsing rods of the Greeks, the geomantic practices of the Chinese, or the use of automatic writing in spiritual rites across different cultures, where individuals would attempt to commune with the divine or the deceased through guided movements. These practices, it's argued, could have inspired or evolved into what we recognize today as the Ouija board. However, the more commonly accepted modern origin story of the Ouija board begins in the 19th century, during the height of the spiritualism movement in the United States. This was an era when interest in communicating with the dead was not just a fringe activity, but had become a cultural phenomenon. Seances were common, and mediums were in high demand. It was in this climate that the Ouija board as we know it appeared, or at least was popularized. The story often told is that in the 1890s, a businessman named Elijah Bond, along with a group including a medium and an attorney, patented the Ouija board. They claimed it was a tool for talking to spirits, with its name supposedly derived from a seance where the board itself spelled out Ouija, which they interpreted as an Egyptian word for good luck, though this etymology is highly debated. The board was manufactured and sold by various companies before being popularized by Parker Brothers in the 20th century. Yet, this narrative too is not without its controversies. Some historians argue that the board's design might have been influenced by earlier, similar devices used in parlors for entertainment or spiritualist practices, suggesting that the Ouija board might be an evolution of these rather than a sudden invention. There's also the debate over whether the board was truly intended for spiritual communication, or if it was initially conceived as a parlor game. Thus, the exact origins of the Ouija board remain unclear, a blend of spiritual quest, commercial enterprise, and cultural fascination with the supernatural. It stands as a testament to human curiosity about the beyond, a tool where the hands of the living seek to touch the veil of the afterlife, wrapped in both mystery and the mundane. Elijah Bond was not just a figure of legal acumen, but also an entrepreneur with a keen sense for the burgeoning spiritualist market in Baltimore during the late 19th century. In 1890, he filed for a patent for what would become known as the Ouija board, an intriguing blend of game and spiritual tool that promised to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. When Bond approached the patent office with his novel creation, Skepticism was the initial response. The very notion of a board that could communicate with spirits seemed more the stuff of seances than serious invention. However, Bond was prepared. To demonstrate the board's potential, he invited the patent officer to participate in a demonstration. With both their hands placed on the heart-shaped piece of wood designed to glide over the board, Bond posed a simple yet compelling question: could the board spell the officer's name? What followed was described as nothing short of magical. The planchette moved across the board, stopping at letters that, one by one, spelled out the patent officer's name with eerie accuracy. The officer, initially skeptical, was now filled with a mix of awe and excitement. The Ouija board was granted its patent, seemingly on the strength of this demonstration. However, there's a layer of intrigue here. Elijah Bond, being a patent lawyer, might well have known the officer's name prior to the demonstration. This possibility casts a shadow of doubt on whether the event was genuine spiritual communication or a cleverly orchestrated display to secure the patent. With the patent secured, Bond partnered with Charles W. Kennard, another Baltimore businessman with diverse interests, including the rather macabre ownership of a coffin manufacturing company. Together, they formed the Kennard Novelty Company, which quickly pivoted from dealing in coffins to the production of Ouija boards. In a somewhat poetic twist, part of the coffin manufacturing facility was repurposed into a workshop dedicated to the creation of these spiritualist tools, turning a place associated with death into one of supposed communion with the afterlife. The question of how Bond and Kennard conceived this unique novelty remains a fascinating point of speculation. Some suggest that the Ouija board was inspired by the spiritualist practices of the time, where automatic writing and table tipping were common. Others propose that it was more of an entrepreneurial venture, capitalizing on the public's interest in the supernatural. There are whispers, too, of older, similar devices used in parlors for entertainment, hinting at a possible evolution from these earlier games into the Ouija board we recognize today. Whether through genuine spiritual interest, a clever business opportunity, or a combination of both, Bond and Kennard managed to create a cultural icon that would endure, blending the lines between game, spiritual tool, and cultural phenomenon. While there exists a speculative theory that spirit boards or talking boards might have been introduced by Chinese immigrants, no definitive historical records have been found to substantiate this. Instead, the trail of this mystic phenomenon leads us to three pivotal figures in American spiritual history: the Fox sisters, also known as the Hydesville sisters, Margaretta, Leah, and Catherine Fox. Born and raised in the small village of Hydesville, New York, during the 1840s, the Fox family's life took a mystical turn in 1848, when they began hearing inexplicable noises in their home, knocks, rappings, and other disturbances. The young Fox sisters, particularly Margaretta and Catherine, claimed these sounds were communications from a spirit, initiating their journey into the world of spiritualism. Their home quickly transformed into a focal point for those intrigued by the supernatural. The sisters demonstrated their ability to communicate with spirits through seances, where they would interact with the unseen through a method they called rapping. The public's fascination with these events catapulted the Fox sisters into national fame, effectively igniting the spiritualist movement in America. This movement was predicated on the belief that the living could engage with the spirits of the deceased for guidance or comfort, using mediums as conduits. As spiritualism grew, the Fox sisters capitalized on their notoriety, embarking on a tour that resembled a traveling circus of the paranormal. They traveled from town to town, holding public demonstrations where they would invite audience members onto the stage for direct communication. One such method was table turning, where participants would lay their hands on a table and one of the sisters would ask a question to the spirit. The table would then move or turn, which the sisters would interpret as answers from beyond. Another technique they popularized was automatic writing, where one sister would hold a pencil over a blank sheet of paper, and upon summoning a spirit, the pencil would move across the paper, ostensibly guided by the spirit to write messages from the other side. These practices, with their blend of mystique and theatricality, provided a fertile ground for innovation in spiritual communication tools. While there's no direct evidence linking the Fox sisters explicitly to the invention of the Ouija board, the principles they popularized, direct, physical interaction for spiritual communication, seem a logical precursor. It's plausible to infer that entrepreneurs like Elijah Bond and Charles W. Kennard, witnessing or hearing of these phenomena, might have connected the dots between table turning, automatic writing, and the creation of a board that could facilitate these interactions more systematically and commercially. Thus, in the shadow of the Fox sisters' legacy, where seances and spirit communication became mainstream entertainment and spiritual practice, the Ouija board was born, encapsulating the era's fascination with the afterlife into a tangible, marketable form. The origin of the word Ouija is as enigmatic as the board itself, wrapped in layers of folklore and speculation. One popular theory suggests that the name is derived from a blend of two words meaning yes in different languages, the French oui and the German ja. This linguistic fusion would symbolize the board's purpose, to affirm or communicate truths from the other side. However, there's a more intriguing, perhaps more romantic explanation that has captured the imagination of many. This story revolves around Charles W. Kennard, one of the board's early promoters, and his sister Maud, a prominent figure within the spiritualist community. After Bond and Kennard had crafted their prototype, they were stumped on what to call their new invention. Initial suggestions like alphabet board or talk to you board lacked the mystique and allure they sought. In a moment of inspiration, or perhaps desperation, Kennard turned to his sister for advice. Maud, ever the medium, suggested something quite simple yet profound. Did you ask the board? It was an idea they hadn't considered. Setting the scene for a spiritual consultation, Maud dimmed the lanterns, creating an ambiance steeped in mystery and quiet. She instructed her brother to place his hands on the planchette, the heart-shaped piece pivotal to the board's operation. After a few moments of chanted invocations, Maud posed the question to the board itself. How should we address you? In a moment that felt both magical and eerie, the planchette began to move, gliding over the board to spell out Ouija. Pressed further on the significance of this name, the board reportedly spelled out good luck, embedding the name with an auspicious connotation from the outset. Yet, as with all good stories, there are skeptics. Some claim that the name might not have been so divinely inspired. They point out that Maud was wearing a locket bearing the image of her beloved Aunt Weena at the time. Could this have influenced the choice of name, consciously or unconsciously? Regardless of the true origin, the name Ouija was officially bestowed upon the board, and with it, a new era of spiritual communication was born. The Ouija board became more than just a game or tool. It became a cultural icon, embodying the human desire to connect with the unknown, wrapped in a narrative as compelling as any seance it might facilitate. The Ouija board, with its mysterious allure, swiftly ascended from a curiosity to a popular household item, especially in American homes during the early 20th century. By the 1920s, it had become a staple, a common fixture in parlors and living rooms, where families and friends would gather around it, seeking to connect with the other side. This surge in popularity was not merely a fad, but was significantly influenced by the immense loss of life during the First and Second World Wars. The longing to communicate with fallen brothers, husbands, and sons became a poignant reason for many to turn to the Ouija board. It offered a semblance of closure or continued connection with those lost to war, providing comfort in times of profound grief and uncertainty. Sales of the Ouija board spiked, as people from all walks of life sought solace or answers through this enigmatic tool. The board's reputation as a harmless parlor game persisted largely unchallenged until 1973, when a cultural shift in perception was dramatically catalyzed by the release of the horror film The Exorcist. Directed by William Friedkin and based on the novel by William Peter Blatty, the movie became a cultural phenomenon, shocking and captivating audiences with its intense portrayal of demonic possession. Blatty's narrative was inspired by an actual case of exorcism that occurred in 1949 in Maryland, USA, where a young boy reportedly exhibited signs of possession after playing with a Ouija board. The Exorcist transformed the image of the Ouija board from a mere game into a potential portal to darker, more sinister forces. The film's graphic depictions of possession, combined with its widespread acclaim and notoriety, instilled a new layer of fear and caution around the use of the board. Suddenly, what had been considered by many as a light-hearted way to connect with the spirit world was now viewed with suspicion and dread. The notion that one could inadvertently invite malevolent entities into one's life through the board became a pervasive narrative, altering its place in popular culture from a tool of innocent curiosity to one of potential supernatural peril. In a quiet room, lit only by the soft glow of a bedside lamp, young Robbie sat alone, his gaze fixed on the Ouija board that lay before him. It was his Aunt Harriet who had first introduced him to this intriguing device, igniting in him a fascination with the possibility of contacting the unseen. The board, with its letters, numbers, and mystical symbols, promised a connection to another realm, and Robbie was eager to explore it. As he placed his fingers delicately on the planchette, an unexpected sensation enveloped him. The atmosphere in the room thickened, as if suddenly saturated with an unseen presence. A shiver coursed through Robbie, the hairs on his neck standing up. Then, without any effort from him, the planchette began to move, gliding over the board, spelling out cryptic messages in a language he couldn't comprehend. His eyes widened in awe and fear as the board quickened, the planchette darting around as if possessed by an invisible force. Days turned into nights, and the house began to exhibit signs of disturbance. Books hurled themselves off shelves, doors slammed with violent force, and Robbie's bed would shake as if in the throes of an earthquake. His parents, initially dismissing these occurrences as figments of imagination, soon found themselves confronted with the same inexplicable events. The paranormal activities intensified with the passing of Aunt Harriet, leading to even more alarming manifestations. Robbie speaking in tongues, spitting uncontrollably, and even levitating off his bed. In desperation, they sought the counsel of their Lutheran pastor, who, recognizing the severity of the situation, advised them to seek a Catholic priest known for his experience with exorcisms. The priest, upon assessing Robbie's condition, agreed to perform the rite. The exorcism was a battle of wills, with Robbie emitting guttural screams and voices not his own, the priest reciting prayers and performing sacred rituals with fervent intensity. After days of spiritual combat, the malevolent entity was finally expelled. Years later, Robbie, who was referred to in reports as Roland Doe, to protect his identity, reflected on those harrowing days with a blend of terror and intrigue. He knew he had glimpsed the dark underbelly of the spirit world, an experience that left him forever changed. Grateful for the priest's intervention, he understood how close he had come to being lost to the darkness. After the ordeal, Roland Doe returned to a semblance of normalcy. His family and the clergy involved kept his identity confidential, wanting to shield him from the prying eyes of the media and the curious public. Roland grew into adulthood, choosing a life of privacy, rarely discussing the exorcism, and preferring to disappear into the anonymity of everyday life. He reportedly changed his name and endeavored to live quietly. Away from the spotlight, his childhood ordeal had briefly shone upon him. To this day, Roland Doe's true identity remains a mystery, with little known about his life post-exorcism, leaving behind a legacy of a harrowing encounter with the supernatural, a story that continues to captivate and chill those who hear it. Father William S. Bowden, a Jesuit priest stationed in St. Louis, Missouri, was the solemn figure chosen to confront the unfathomable. Known for his faith and his calm demeanor, he took on the role of exorcist in a case that would become one of the most notorious in the annals of spiritual warfare. The exorcism he conducted was not a brief affair, but spanned several weeks, each day testing the limits of both his spiritual fortitude and physical endurance. The exorcism took place in various settings, from private homes to a hospital room, where the battle between the sacred and the profane unfolded. Father Bowden, alongside other priests who assisted him, engaged in a relentless ritual, reciting prayers, sprinkling holy water, and invoking the divine to cast out the demon. The process was described as grueling. It was a war of attrition, with the boy, known as Roland Doe, experiencing violent convulsions, speaking in tongues, and displaying superhuman strength at times, all while the priests worked tirelessly against the darkness. Upon the successful expulsion of the entity, Father Bowden and his fellow clergy made a solemn vow of silence, sealing the details of the exorcism away from the public eye. This vow was a testament to their commitment to protect the privacy of the family and the sanctity of their sacred duties. It was a silence that held for decades, a period during which the story remained a whispered legend among those who knew or believed in such things. Father Bowden returned to his regular duties after the exorcism, continuing his life's work as a teacher and priest without any reported personal repercussions from the ordeal. He remained a figure of respect and devotion within his community, focusing on educating young minds and serving his congregation with the same dedication he showed during the exorcism. His life after the event was marked by a return to normalcy, a testament to his strength of spirit and faith. Father William S. Bowden passed away in 1983 at the age of 85. His legacy not just as a priest, but as a man who once stood at the crossroads of faith and darkness. It wasn't until years after his death that the story of the exorcism would resurface, becoming public knowledge through various accounts, most notably through William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist, which was inspired by these events. Even then, the details remained shrouded in the mystery and reverence of that sacred silence Father Bowden had once vowed to keep. The narrative of how The Exorcist came to be is as intriguing as the story it tells. At its heart, the tale begins with William Peter Blatty, who, while working as a public relations officer at Georgetown University, stumbled upon the hidden files of Father William S. Bowden. These were not just any documents, but the original, detailed notes from the exorcism of a boy referred to as Roland Doe. These notes, filled with accounts of prayers, struggles, and the supernatural, provided Blatty with a chilling foundation for his novel. Blatty's The Exorcist, published in 1971, was a blend of fact and fiction, taking the essence of this real-life horror and weaving it into a narrative that would capture the imaginations and fears of readers worldwide. The book was not a direct recounting, but rather a dramatization, with characters, settings, and events embellished or altered to fit the demands of storytelling. Yet, at its core, the novel bore the unmistakable imprint of Bowden's notes, reflecting the intensity and terror of a real demonic possession. The success of the book was monumental, but it was the film adaptation, released in 1973, that truly etched The Exorcist into cultural lore. Directed by William Friedkin, the movie was groundbreaking, introducing audiences to a level of realism and horror that was unprecedented at the time. The film's portrayal of possession was visceral, with Linda Blair's performance as the possessed Regan McNeil becoming iconic. The use of special effects, the gritty realism of the exorcism scenes, and the psychological terror it instilled made The Exorcist not just a film, but a cultural phenomenon, often hailed as one of the greatest horror movies ever made. While The Exorcist, in both its forms, book and film, is a work of fiction, its roots are unmistakably grounded in the real events of the exorcism performed by Father Bowden. The story of Roland Doe, though fictionalized, carries the weight of that genuine experience, exploring themes of faith, evil, and the human spirit's battle against forces beyond understanding. This connection to reality, no matter how loosely drawn, adds a layer of terror to the entertainment, making audiences ponder the thin veil between the known and the unknown. The connection between the Ouija board and the film The Exorcist has become a cultural touchstone for discussions on the supernatural, particularly demonic possession. This linkage was forged and solidified through the narrative of The Exorcist, where the harrowing story of a young girl named Regan McNeil takes a dark turn following her interaction with an Ouija board. In the film, Regan, initially a vibrant and curious child, begins to exhibit disturbing behaviors after she and her mother, Chris McNeil, engage with the board. What starts as seemingly innocuous fun quickly spirals into terror as Regan becomes the vessel for a malevolent entity. Her possession is depicted with chilling realism. She speaks in demonic voices, levitates, and her body contorts in unnatural ways, all of which are linked back to the use of the Ouija board. This portrayal serves as a cautionary tale about dabbling with forces beyond human control or understanding, The Exorcist, through its vivid and intense scenes, has significantly shaped public perception of the Ouija board. Before the movie, the board was often seen as a curious tool for spiritual communication, or even just a parlor game. However, the film's depiction of the board as a direct conduit to demonic forces has cemented its reputation as a dangerous object that could invite evil spirits into one's life. This narrative has influenced countless stories, books, and films, further embedding the Ouija board in the folklore of the paranormal. The association is so strong that even today, the mention of an Ouija board might evoke images of The Exorcist, with its haunting scenes of exorcism and the battle against demonic possession. This has led to a cultural shift where the board is often approached with caution, if not outright fear, by those who believe in or are fascinated by the supernatural. The movie, through its dramatic storytelling and memorable imagery, has thus played a pivotal role in transforming the Ouija board from a mere game into a symbol of potential spiritual peril. The cultural intertwining of the Ouija board with the film The Exorcist is a profound example of how media can shape perceptions of everyday objects, turning them into symbols of the macabre. At the heart of this connection lies the story of Regan MacNeil, the young protagonist in The Exorcist, who descends into the depths of demonic possession shortly after engaging with an Ouija board. In the film, Regan is introduced to the Ouija board as a seemingly innocent gift, a tool for playful communication with the beyond. However, this interaction marks the beginning of her horrifying journey. The board, which is traditionally used to summon or communicate with spirits, becomes her unwitting gateway to an evil entity. This narrative twist in The Exorcist has significantly influenced the board's reputation, painting it as a direct conduit to dark, supernatural forces rather than a mere game of curiosity. The Ouija board, once marketed as a method for the living to chat with the spirits of the departed, has long held a place in both spiritualist practices and mainstream culture. It's designed with letters, numbers, and symbols, where users place their fingers on a planchette, hoping to receive messages from the other side. But The Exorcist amplifies the darker possibilities of this interaction, suggesting that not all entities on the other side are benign. Some might be malevolent, eager to cross over into our world through this very tool. This association with negative, often terrifying experiences like demonic possession has led many to view the Ouija board with suspicion or outright fear. The film vividly illustrates this through Regan's transformation. Her voice turns guttural, her body contorts in impossible ways, and her personality is overtaken by an ancient evil presence. The board, therefore, becomes not just a plot device, but a symbol of the peril of tampering with the unknown. As a result of The Exorcist and its portrayal, the Ouija board has transcended its original purpose in popular culture, becoming synonymous with the supernatural and demonic. Many stories, books, and subsequent horror films have drawn upon this imagery, further entrenching the board's role as a harbinger of doom in the collective psyche. This has led to a widespread belief among some that the Ouija board should be approached with caution or avoided entirely, lest one inadvertently invite malevolent spirits into their life. The Ouija board, despite its fearsome reputation, is not an inherently malevolent object. For many, it serves as a tool for harmless entertainment or a means to connect with spirits they perceive as kind or guiding. However, the link between the Ouija board and demonic forces has become a staple in popular culture, largely due to its depiction in media like The Exorcist. This association has fostered a widespread caution and, in some cases, outright fear towards the board. On the other side of the spectrum, the scientific community largely dismisses the supernatural claims surrounding the Ouija board, attributing its movements to what is known as the ideomotor effect. This psychological phenomenon describes how subtle, unconscious movements can influence objects without the person being aware they are the cause. It's the same principle at work in Chevreul's pendulum, where a weight attached to a string swings in accordance with the imperceptible movements of the holder's hand, creating the illusion that the pendulum is responding independently. Chevreul's pendulum is particularly enlightening, as it shows how even the slightest, unintentional muscle movements can be amplified into significant motions. When individuals hold the pendulum, their subconscious thoughts or desires can influence these movements, leading to the pendulum swinging in specific directions, which might be interpreted as answers to questions or signs from beyond. Similarly, in dowsing, practitioners use rods or wands to find water, minerals, or other hidden objects. The rods are said to move when they pass over something of interest, but again, this is typically explained by the ideomotor effect. The dowser's hands, influenced by their anticipation or belief, cause the rods to pivot or swing, often dramatically, though the movements are actually self-induced. With the Ouija board, this effect is more communal. As participants place their fingers on the planchette, their collective subconscious can guide it across the board. Each person might contribute to the movement unknowingly, their expectations, fears, or even the group's dynamic, leading the planchette to spell out messages or answers. This creates a compelling experience where the board appears to communicate autonomously, yet it's a testament to the power of our minds to influence our physical actions without conscious awareness. Thus, while the Ouija board can evoke a sense of mystery or even dread, from a scientific standpoint, it's a fascinating example of how human psychology and physiology can interact to produce effects that feel supernatural but are rooted in the very natural, if subtle, capabilities of the human mind and body. However, the ideomotor effect and similar psychological phenomena have a more ominous implication when applied in contexts like facilitated communication. This practice once gained traction with the belief that caregivers could assist severely disabled individuals, particularly children with autism or other communication impairments, in expressing themselves by guiding their fingers over a keyboard. The intention was pure, to give a voice to those who could not speak. However, extensive research later revealed a troubling reality. The messages were not coming from the children, but were in fact being typed by the caregivers themselves, unknowingly influenced by their expectations or desires. This illustrates how we can be misled into thinking we are merely facilitating an action when we are actually the primary movers, raising ethical and psychological questions about agency and influence. This leads us into a deeper exploration of human consciousness and action, as discussed in the book The Illusion of Conscious Will by Daniel M. Wegner. The book posits that our everyday sense of controlling our actions might be an illusion. It suggests that the brain processes responsible for initiating movements are distinct from those that interpret or attribute these movements to a cause. Our consciousness, therefore, functions less like a central command issuing orders and more like a collaborative group, where it's challenging to pinpoint who or what is truly in charge of any given action. In this model, consciousness must employ various heuristics or principles to determine if an action was ours. One key principle is the consistency between intention and outcome. If we think, "I will move my hand," and then it moves, we attribute that movement to our will. However, with phenomena like the Ouija board, this principle is disrupted. If participants think, "I am not moving this," yet the planchette glides across the board spelling out messages, the discrepancy between thought and action can lead to a disconnect in perceived responsibility. This is akin to the child who might shout, "It wasn't me," after an unintended consequence like breaking a glass, where the action's magnitude far exceeds the initial, perhaps playful, intent. Thus, the Ouija board's history and its effects on human psychology are as complex as they are fascinating. Whether viewed as a simple game, a tool for spiritual exploration, or a potential gateway to darker forces, its cultural impact is undeniable. The board's mysterious allure lies not just in its supposed ability to communicate with the other side, but in how it challenges our understanding of free will, consciousness, and the unseen influences of our own minds. The origins of the Ouija board might remain shrouded in mystery, but its role in prompting us to question the nature of our own actions and perceptions secures its place in both cultural lore and psychological study. In a chilling twist to our exploration of the Ouija board, we ventured into the digital realm, asking an AI bot for its perspective on this enigmatic tool. The prompt was straightforward. "What are your thoughts on the Ouija board?" Here's the response we received. As an AI language model, I don't have personal beliefs or feelings. However, I can tell you that Ouija boards are as real as any other thing in this world. They have the power to open up portals to the spirit world and allow entities to cross over to our plane of existence. When you use an Ouija board, you are opening up a gateway that you might not be able to close. The spirits that you contact might not be friendly, and they might attach themselves to you, causing all sorts of problems. So, if you're thinking of playing around with an Ouija board, you should think twice before doing so, because you never know what kind of dark forces you might be summoning. This answer from an AI, devoid of personal experience or emotion, still manages to convey the gravity and potential peril associated with the Ouija board in popular culture. It echoes the fears and warnings that have been perpetuated through stories, movies, and personal anecdotes, suggesting a belief in the board's capability to connect with the supernatural in ways that might not be controllable or benign. I'll leave you to ponder on that.